2024. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to be with you today. My name is Larry Liza. Thank you for joining us for Third Thursday on this date of 17th October 2024. This is a sensitive day for this nation as well because the impeachment of the deputy president is currently on. They will be voting in about 1.5 hours. So we will be done if you want to follow the votes by that time. And this afternoon, the deputy president was reported to have fallen sick and admitted at Karen Hospital. The Senate leadership proposed that the matter be adjourned until Saturday, which is the 10th day permissible by law, and he put it to vote. He put the matter for the senators to vote, and they defeated the motion and said, no, lazima tuendelee, tumalize leo. And at that time, the leadership of the Deputy President, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, took their leave from the Senate and said they would not be able to continue. So currently, the final submissions are on by the parliamentary team. And as I said, the voting will take place around 9 p.m. based on the timelines that I have. Thank you for joining us for Third Thursday. Today, we are focusing on mental wellness or well-being. It goes beyond mental health, and we are honored and privileged to have my sister, my friend, who I have known since birth, Dr. Sarah Bahati Standa. My mom and Dr. Sarah's mom, who is my aunt, called Auntie Betty Smith. Oh, I love that woman, were born and brought up in Mombasa together. For those who know my coastal roots, were born and brought up together, and she later married the late Professor Everett Standa, who is my greatest poet of all time. About this time last year, we lost Professor Standa, and once again, Sarah, we empathize with you. I know you are not expecting me to say this. So to start us off, as we discuss mental wellness and mental well-being, it's a point for you to ask yourself, sometimes you think you are okay, and you are actually not okay. There are a lot of things that are happening in this country, in our families, communities, the country, the continent, and the world at large. And we are really, really honored and privileged to hear from Dr. Sarah Bahati Standa. I'm going to request my friend and sister, Florence Masai, to lead us to the arms of the Father through prayer. Welcome, Florence. Florence Masai, you are muted. If she, in the spirit of not take, okay, there she goes. Florence, please.
Okay, let us believe and pray. Dear Father, we come before your presence this evening with thanksgiving in our hearts. We pray, dear Father, that as we gather for this session, dear Father, to talk and learn more about mental wellness, we pray that you may guide us and you may help us, that we may understand whatever we learn, dear Father. We also pray that as Dr. Standa talks to us, you may guide her and speak through her. We pray that you may guide us through this session. In Jesus' name I pray and believe.
Amen. Thank you so much, Miss Masai. Dr. Sarah Standa was born and brought up in different places in this country. I know she's now smiling. We need your camera on, Daktari, so that we see your funny reactions, because you rarely hide. I can't remember where you went to nursery school, but I know you really didn't like nursery school, but with the grace of God, you went through primary school and then went to Kenya High School. Kenya High School is one of my favorite girls' schools alongside Pangani Girls and State House Girls. Those are my favorite high schools for those who are there. And then she managed to make it to Moi University, where she studied medicine and joined Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, I believe, for her internship. Sarah is a wonderful person. The moment I announced that we will be with you, many people commented and said we know her, we like her, and so on. So she's a consultant psychiatrist currently at Nyahururu County and Referral Hospital, and also partners with Johawi Mental Wellness Center and she is an excellent person in this regard. It is 1935. Dr. Bahati, karibu.
We've talked with him.
Thank you so much, Larry, for that beautiful introduction. And yes, Larry is basically a brother and family to us. I do not want to spend so much time because Larry has actually done everything in terms of introducing me to the participants. And I want to most sincerely thank everyone who's joined in. In case you know someone who would wish to be in this meeting and they're not here, please drop a reminder so that you can all learn together. I will take some bit of time taking us through mental health, and I'll leave ample time so that you're also able to ask questions and share our experiences, because it's through shared experiences that we get to learn more and we get to encourage each other. So that I do not waste a lot of time, allow me to go right ahead and share my screen so that we can start. So Larry has been able to introduce me quite well. I am working as a consultant psychiatrist in the county government of Laikipia, and I'm based in Nyahururu County and Referral Hospital, and I also run a private clinic within the same town. For this particular talk, I want to be quite general on basically mental wellness, but I hope we all realize that this particular month houses the Mental Health World Day, the World Mental Health Day, sorry about that. And we celebrated it on the 10th of October this month. And our theme this year is mental health at work. So when I talked to Larry and I said, Larry, I want to give something on mental health. And he said, sure. And I said, I want to do it around the month of October. And he said, why not? Go right ahead, Sarah, and do you. And I want to just say thank you to Larry, because through these third Thursdays, we've been able to learn so many topics. You know, some of us being in health, we never get a chance to be educated on finances and other things. But yes, Larry, you've done a good job, and we are grateful. So you will allow me to drop in a bit of mental health at work, because those of us who are gathered here, and for Larry to bring this particular discussion at around 5 o'clock, after 5, is because he factored in that most of us would be at work. And so after work, we will have time. And because of that, I said, I will drop one or two. One or two.
Ya maseneta 67 watakaokuwa wanatarajiwa kupiga kura.
Sorry for that, Sarah.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So this is the theme of this year's World Mental Health Day, which we celebrated about 7 days ago. And I will go straight into my discussion. So I will be as lay as possible. I will not go into the jargons of psychiatry, because as it is, psychiatry has a number of vocabularies that I will shy away from for this particular presentation, simply because I'm cognizant of the fact that we all come from different backgrounds when it comes to our profession. So what is mental health in a nutshell? So it is just how we think and feel and act. Or basically, it is our ability to deal with the ups and downs of life. Yeah. And it is important to note that we all have mental health, just like we all have physical health. For this particular one, I want us to realize that, you know, my physical health is extremely different from your physical health. And we can say that maybe I could be struggling with headaches, frequent headaches. I could be struggling with maybe backaches, or maybe coughs, or maybe gastritis, and so on and so forth. So is our mental health. There's someone else who could be struggling with mood. There's someone else who could be struggling with thoughts. There's someone else who could be having a slightly different personality from the other person. And so social skills become a bit of a problem for them. It is important for us to realize that if we enjoy good mental health, we will have a sense of purpose and direction. We will have the energy to do the things that we want to do, and we'll have the ability to deal with challenges that happen in our lives. So I hope you realize and you're taking note of the fact that good mental health is not equal to life without challenges. It is equal to life with challenges, but with ability to cope with the challenges. So being in a state of well-being is basically saying that you're in a state where we can reach our potential, we can cope with normal life stresses, we can work productively, and I want us to underline the word work productively, because failure to being in a good state of mental well-being, we end up not being as productive as we are supposed to be. And because of that, we are able to contribute to the community. This is according to the WHO in the year 2014. So when you talk about aspects of work that harm or empower mental well-being, these are usually referred to as psychosocial risks. And most of the times, they're usually just called risks to our mental well-being. Yeah, and that work is just not one of those risks. Work is like a double-edged sword that can be protective as well as detrimental to our mental well-being. There are quite a number of statistics as pertains mental health. I will not be tempted to go into the global statistics. I will stick to the Kenyan statistics, what is with us nationally. And I want us to realize that maybe we are not as detailed as we are supposed to be, because chances are that the problem is bigger than what is reported. So this is what we have that is reported. And where we are right now at home, that's Kenya, it is estimated that 1 in every 10 persons suffers from a common mental health disorder. Yeah, and this number tends to go higher once you have comorbidities. And when we talk about comorbidities, we talk about other problems that are not mental health problems. We're talking about chronic illnesses. We're talking about diabetes, hypertension. We're talking about cancers. So when you tend to have these other problems, you are higher, like you have a higher likelihood of developing mental health disorders. So this, because of these other conditions, you are more likely to, 1 in every 4 people among patients with chronic illnesses are more likely to develop mental disorders. According to our statistics, we say depression and anxiety are the leading mental health disorders, and they're followed closely by substance use disorders. We all the same think that also substance use disorders are actually on the rise, and more so alcohol. You know, we tend to have this repetition as a country of using a lot of alcohol. And lately we are seeing that the younger generation is inclining more towards marijuana, heart, and the likes. And maybe tobacco is coming down a bit, maybe because of the taxes that have been imposed on it. The third bit about the population that uses alcohol the most is between 18 to 29 years. And this can be found within the Mental Health Task Force in the Ministry of Health website. So when you talk about poor mental health, what do we mean? In simple terms, we are saying mental distress. There are times we call it mental illness, but that tends to have some stigma connotation to it. And we are saying mental distress can be different for everyone. What is distressing to me may not be distressing to somebody else. And it is important that even as we speak right now, that we all have times when we struggle with our mental health. It is not for that person who's so far away. It's not for the person who's walking on the streets and picking rubbish. No, 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 no. In fact, mental illness is so close to us. If it is not a friend, it is family, it is a colleague, it is someone who's affected. And once you're sharing space with someone who is struggling with mental disorders, for sure you're also affected, because there are so many things that you have to compromise with as you relate with these people. So we'll find that mental health problems will develop when these difficult experiences of go on for a long time and affect our ability to enjoy our lives the way we want to. For the last bulletin, I think it's so important for me to emphasize on this, that yes, some of us have a diagnosis, and I say us because we are owning this problem. It's with us, it's here and now. And there's some of us who may not have a diagnosis. And I want to bring to your attention that those of us who do not have this diagnosis, the people who already have a problem, but they have not been diagnosed, and this is the majority of people Most people walking around with no diagnosis and have mental illness are more than those who've been diagnosed. And there are those who may have a diagnosis, but they totally do not agree with it. For people who have poor mental well-being, it is quite costly for them at an individual level or an organization level. Organization herein stand for either institutions they're working for or like family setups they are in, because mental health is not well catered for even in our country. However, the costs towards supporting someone with mental disorder are quite high. You can either have acutely, you can be suffering acutely or chronically. And acutely could be anything ranging from acute stress disorder as a result of death of a loved one to loss of a job, or you can be chronically sick for years. You've been managed for maybe schizophrenia, or you've never been managed. Maybe you've had mood issues that have never been able to get medical attention. And most of the times, people end up having poor mental health because of either single or repeated exposure to risk factors that I will be able to outline in the next slides. Some of the impact of just not being well mentally can lead to having even a severe form of mental disorder. And this could be anything from mood to thought disorders, whether it's bipolar, major depressive disorder, or schizophrenia. So the impact is usually quite big. So risk factors to having mental health disorder can be many. And I've just tried to summarize in these 5, and there are others that I've actually not been able to incorporate them here, and we can be able to explore them in our courses. So things like genetics, I hope we realize that genetics play a big role. So if you're genetically predisposed to having mental disorders, let's say your grandmother, your mother, or your father suffered from mental illness, there's a high likelihood that the trait was passed on to you. Whether it's dominant or not, we do not know until you end up with a problem. And you're more likely to pass it on. It may miss that particular generation, but it can be able to catch the next generation. When you talk about financial constraints, when you're constantly strained to even meet basic needs, these are people who end up looking for other options of surviving, and in the process can lead to triggering matters, poor mental health. Your past, what did you go through in your past that was not resolved, that is now eating into your future? Childhood trauma. There are children, or rather there are people who are living, but they had terrible experiences when they were growing up, from physical abuse to sexual abuse to bias, name it. And because of that, you find that these are people who will carry on all those experiences because they were not resolved into their adulthood, and they'll keep manifesting in different ways. Any form of discrimination, definitely a risk factor to developing.
Dr. Sarah, sorry for that
Yes.
interruption. We normally do our best to ensure that people are muted on entry, but others mute, Magdalene, but others still go ahead and unmute, and it's very difficult for us to to solve that. So I apologize. I also want to use this opportunity to ask those who have questions to please send them on the chat, and those who have my WhatsApp numbers to please send them on the chat and to me on WhatsApp. We'll monitor them and ask Daktari as soon as she's done. Once again, I apologize to everyone for unmuting. It's the system we are using. They are totally muted, and some still go ahead and unmute for one reason or another. My apologies, Daktari.
It's okay. It's okay. So we're also talking about ongoing physical illnesses. We're talking about chronic illnesses like diabetes, hypertension, cancers, HIV. These are risk factors to developing mental illness. Why? 1, because of the illness itself, and 2, because of the associations related to this illness or the strains associated to these illnesses. Other things that I did not mention here, but could also be risk factors and as well causes matter substances or drugs of abuse can also lead one to developing mental disorders. And of note, what I've put in red is mental health problems can happen to anyone. It's not a seclusion for someone who's there. It's not for people who do not belong to your family. It's not for people who don't belong to your social circles. No, it can be even to you yourself. So do not sit back and say, I'm not deserving of a diagnosis, because most of the times we don't know who we are. There's someone else who can view you better and say, I think there's this problem. And we should be willing to listen to those people. So it can happen to anybody. And that's one of the most important take-homes for that particular slide. What causes poor mental health? As I said before, on the risk factors, poverty or financial constraints can lead to a lot of distress mentally in the process of trying to provide for the basic needs, whether for yourself or for the family. Inequalities, basically disparities and inequalities between different groups. And you know very well, social clustering is real. And most of the times you'll find that the higher cluster will treat the lower clusters not so fairly. There are people who are socially isolated, and because of that, they end up being lonely. They can end up with communities. And so you find that these are people who feel marginalized and excluded, and it puts a stress to them. There's the issue of low levels of education, and because of that, these are people who are not most of the times included in decision making and do not participate in that. And because of that, they will feel a little bit out because of their reduced opportunities. The rapid social change, and we can see that even in our country, you know, rapid social change in a society would influence so many things, from societal values, beliefs, and behavior. And this many times can affect the well-being of the society and the people in it. Take a case example of now what we're going through as a country in terms of our economy. Most people are really struggling. Politically, we are not so sure. And because of this, we may not realize, but maybe a few months or years down the line, we'll be able to pick what this would mean to our health. When you talk about emergencies, most of the times when people face difficult situation, will end up affect them negatively, especially if they were not worked through it psychologically and were not supported well on the basis of psychosocial support. Take a case example of what happened recently in May, the Mayu floods, or even currently in the US, the hurricane and things like those. So those are things that possibly would put a strain on people's mental health. When you talk about stressful work conditions, and you know, at this point in time, I want to emphasize on the fact that work consumes quite a bit of our time. Out of 24 hours a week, 8 hours is spent at work. Another 8 hours is presumed to be spent while in bed sleeping, or rather rest. The other 8 hours is supposed to do literally everything for you. Get you to work, get you out of work, cook for your children, support your family, be there for yourself, attend chamas, and everything that has to be done in a day, you know, so you need to like squeeze everything in the 8 hours. So these other 8 hours that you're spending at work basically is half of the time when you're awake. So half of your time, you're spending it at work. It needs to be less stressful. Discrimination and violation of human rights. Yeah, anybody who goes through this normally tends to have feelings of lower self-worth, low confidence, and they're not as good at controlling, like taking control over their life and being hopeful for the future. Any form of violence and abuse would affect anyone negatively, and more so psychologically. Poor physical health conditions would possibly present everyday barrier and challenges towards one's psychological state, because you're constantly worried. Will the prognosis be good? Will I have enough finances to take care of my physical health condition that I have currently, especially for the chronic ones, and so on and so forth. When you do not have adequate services or support, and more so when it's in line with violation of human rights, it is quite troubling for anybody, and this can lead to poor mental health. So generally, we have a number of mental illness, mental disorders, and I want to be as fast as possible. Going by our data, we have anxiety topping our list, and anxiety disorders. There are quite a number of anxiety disorders in that particular bulletin. Yeah, we have generalized anxiety. We have some of us who have panic disorders. We have mood disorders, and mood disorders in that we'll find depression, bipolar mood. We will have major depressive disorder. Also, major suicide would fall under that bit. We have psychotic disorders, or rather thought disorders, the likes of schizophrenia. Schizoaffective will mix both mood and psychotic disorders. And then personality disorders. This is quite discussed even in our social media platform. Though it's so interesting how we all look at just one type of a cluster disorder, and that is narcissistic, but there are many others. You can go and check them up. There is histrionic, there is narcissistic, there's borderline, there's antisocial, and so on and so forth. And when you get to read about this, you'll be able to look at the people around you and say, this could be their personality, and maybe that's the reason why we don't get along well. And maybe just make a bit of adjustment so that you can be able to incorporate everyone who are within your circles. We have the post-traumatic stress disorder. Remember, I mentioned about the previous trauma that children have to go through, you know. So with that, you find that there are people who live with this trauma for a very long time. Yeah, there's issues of drugs of abuse or substance use disorders, from alcohol, marijuana, name it. And of course, the other chronic illnesses. So when you're talking about mental health and mental well-being, you're talking about it from the point of one, things that would possibly affect your mental health and mental well-being. I've tried to outline this in the risks and the causes, but in a nutshell, you can look at the physical health. You can look at the economic and political systems in which you find yourself in. You can look at your relations. Who are you relating with on a daily basis? Is it family? Is it a spouse who's constantly putting pressure on you? Is it a culture that is not favoring you? Think about the children or the girls in marginalized counties who maybe practice FGM or maybe demean a certain gender. Look at what is it that went through in your life, historical context, that is now tormenting you. What's your environment like? You know, is it favorable for what you're doing? And of course, yeah, for those of us who are subscribing to spiritual wellness, how is it currently? Yeah, so you'll find that state of poor mental well-being will lead you to, one, having compromised sleep, not seeing the need to seek treatment, if at all it needs treatment, you know, being constantly stressed, yeah, not doing what you're supposed to do. Like most of the times, maybe people keep up a good lifestyle, like physical activity or being out with people, or having a good work-life balance. But when you start being unwell, so many things start going off, like your balance between work and life is compromised. You know you're supposed to go out and exercise, but you're not. You know you're supposed to spend time nurturing good relations between family, friends, and workmates, but you're not able to do it. You know what you're supposed to do, but for whatever reason, there's no drive, there's no energy for you to do it. So what is mental health in the workplace? So basically, this is mental health at workplaces would refer to employees' psychological, emotional, and social well-being within a shared work environment. And it is important to note that employees with sound mental health tend to have respect for themselves and others, and they have the capability of building positive relationship with their co-workers, and they're able to cope with daily challenges and responsibilities that are involved in the process of them discharging their duties. It is important that to foster that, we need to protect and promote mental health at work. And this can be achieved, one, by making sure that we are training managers about mental health so that they're able to screen and know which of my employees is struggling. How can I build their interpersonal skills through open communication and active listening? How am I going to foster better understanding of how job stressors can affect mental health and be managed better? You know, you can also train the employees or the workers on what mental health, good mental health is like, and you actually get to improve their knowledge on it. And because of this, you find that you're reducing the stigma amongst these employees, and it yields like better work relationships. Also teaching individuals different interventions. One, you want to build skills on how to manage stress, and thereby reducing mental health symptoms among these people. You want to include psychosocial interventions and opportunities for these people. And more so, there are many companies, especially the private ones, who are keen on doing the employee assisted program. And it's really working very well for most companies, and even some government institutions are actually doing that. Yeah, notably, I think Kenyatta National Hospital and Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital have very good programs in line with that. Yeah, so it is important to support people with mental health conditions to participate in and thrive at work. How do we do this? By making sure that they're accommodated at work, you know, whereby you find that they're able to be allowed to have specific programs. Like, let's say you have an employee who had to go for admission for maybe depression and comes back to the organization. The re-entry needs to be well taken care of. Otherwise, there'll be stigma, there'll be profiling, which is not so good. It's also very important, like when they're coming back from rehabilitation, we should be able to try and see how best to support them instead of constantly saying, you know, he'll still go back and drink or she'll go back and use the support, the substances. When you talk about supported employment initiatives, like what I talked about initially, where even these people who have mental issues need to be supported to getting employment, because as I said before, work can be extremely protective. So I hope you can see that particular figure where we're seeing that when you talk about mental well-being at work, you're talking about an interaction between this individual, the work environment, and the job that they're doing. So with this, we find that most people, work usually provides their main source of income. It boosts self-esteem and identity, and it's part of the individual's contribution to society. You feel useful. You feel like there's something you're doing. You feel like you're contributing to something. And most of the times, if you find that these three are not interacting very well, it usually has a negative effect on one's mental health. So as we go out to look for jobs, as you try to scout for employees, please align their job goal with what they are looking for, or you as a person know what your goal is with a suitable job for you. And most of the times it will focus on either the individual employee, where these organizations, we need to realize that specific, like employees, the individual like aspects are the main resource that an organization would possibly have. And so it is important that their mental health is promoted at all time, because they actually actualize the organization's mission and influence on either the clients or the customers. The working environment needs to be safe and healthy. You know, employees' health and welfare must be protected through risk assessment. Take a case example of people who work in hospitals, you know, it's just fair that whatever it is that they're doing, they're well protected, people in security systems, and so on and so forth. How is this structure, the organizational structure? There's some organizations with really poor culture and structures that do not necessarily support the employees. How is the communication style in the organization? How is the management style? Is it dictatorial or not? So if it's inclusive, then it makes it a bit easier for the employees to play a part in the running of this organization. And because of that, they feel valued and they feel like their input is needed. And this really fosters good mental well-being in this particular people. So factors that can lead to work-related stress is usually workload. And this one, I think most of us would agree with it. Maybe barely a month ago, you may have heard in the airwaves, we lost one of us as a medical intern. And we failed in one way or another as her colleagues, because you can tell that the issue was unfriendly hours, excessive workload, poor work-life balance. Basically, everything that I've been able to outline there was what was affecting this particular client. And most of the times, this would really affect healthcare workers and also the security personnel, like the police and the likes. Sometimes you find people who would suffer from having insufficient work. So they end up being idle in different spaces. And because of idleness, they end up doing things that are not necessary. When you're in a job where you have poor interpersonal relationship, for sure, whether you're not being supported well by supervisors, or you are always constantly having squabbles with your colleagues, you're being bullied, or you're the one bullying, you're harassing, because someone has to be the one doing these things. So whether you're the one or someone else is doing it, I think these are things that need to be changed and change the culture of the workplace. And I think by just talking about the third bulleting, I've been able to address the fourth bullet as well. So there are times we take on jobs that we do not have skills for, or we are given tasks at workplaces where we do not have skills for. So we find that skill gaps really lead to low productivity from the worker. And because of low productivity, you end up feeling stressed because you're not able to meet up the company's targets. So you end up having work-related stresses. There's the issue of lack of proper resources of equipment. And you can tell that sometimes this can happen in people who have hands-on jobs, like doctors. You find you do not have gloves, or nurses and things like those ones. So having the proper resources makes it easier for you to be able to even increase or deliver in good time. Working environment and conditions, it is good that we get the right environment, whether it's less noise, no pollution, proper lighting, less danger or no danger at all. And this is when I think different occupational or organizations need to make sure that we have good working conditions. So good mental health at workplace would lead to organization, would impact poor mental health would possibly impact negatively at the organization level and at the individual level, where you find that at the organization, you find high staff turnover, absenteeism, disciplinary problems, while at individual levels, you'll find poor confidence on the person, and of course, the capacity to work will go down. How best do we address this to create? You have to identify and address factors that can affect mental health in workplaces. You have to raise awareness on what it means to have good mental health among these employees. And you also have to recognize who are these employees who do not have mental health, good in proper mental health space to be able to be supported instead of being stigmatized. It's important for us to have a good working culture where mental health is not a taboo. And this is for all of us. Some of us here are managers, some of us here are employees, whatever it is, let's have a good culture where we're not having issues with the taboo issues. We need to review employment practices and also be able to support those employees who are at risk of ending up with mental health issues. And lastly, we need to ensure that every employee is properly trained for their job. As I wind up, I want us to think about what it is that makes us feel good. What is this thing that we're happy about? You know, there are people who are happy to swim, there are people who are happy to play music, and so on and so forth. We can look after our mental health in very simple ways. We can talk about how we feel. Find a friend, find a colleague. We can be mindful of our physical activity, increase how much you're walking. We can opt to eat well. And eat well doesn't mean increase portion. It means being thoughtful about what and mindful about what you put on your plate. I've said drink responsibly in quotes, just simply meaning that we advocate for 1 pint or maximum 2. But if you think you do not know what sensibly means, please do not drink at all. It's important for us also to manage our relationships. Sometimes you are insisting on being a friend to someone who could be toxic to you, and you could also be toxic to them. Whether it's a friend, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a parent, please go back and review who is close to you, because some of our problems emanate from the kind of relationships we keep. It's okay to ask for help. Please ask for help and be willing to help when your time comes to help. Take a break from work, take a break from family, have your own time. And taking a break doesn't necessarily mean taking leave to go back home and ask the nanny to go on leave. It means taking a break to go and rest. Also, importantly, do something that you're good at, whether it is swimming, crocheting, cooking, or gardening, and do it as a team sometimes. It also helps foster a relationship. Accept who you are. As it is, the world has a lot of pressure. You want to drive a big car, you want to live in a good house, you want your children to go to a good school. Where are you? Reevaluate yourself, call yourself to order, do some minutes, propose them, second them. Just put yourself somewhere where you truly belong and work with what you are. You don't cut your piece according to your clothes. And remember, there is more to giving than receiving. So remember to also care for other people. In a nutshell, we are saying there are 5 ways to well-being. Connect, keep learning, take notice, be active, and give, because it's through giving that we receive. In this, I want all of us to come and have an individual well-being plan. After everything I have said, going by those 5 domains, I want you to ask yourselves, what are you already doing about connection, learning, being active, taking notice, and giving? Yeah. What did you used to do about it? You know, what would you like to start doing or do more of when it comes to these things? And what would you like to stop doing or do less of when it comes to these things? So this is just a small table. For example, in connecting, you can say you can do 1 coffee connection per month. You can get together to reflect on achievements with a friend, you know. You can plan for social gatherings and things like those ones. It can either be career connection, it can be family connection, it can be friend connection, it can be a personal connection. Whatever it is, please connect. Please learn. Ask questions, share knowledge, learn a new skills. If it's crocheting, if it's riding a bike, learn something and keep going at it. Be active. Remember to take the stairs every so often. Remember to park your car so far away and do the walking. Remember to hit the gym or the tracks for running and things like those ones. Give something. It could be as simple as a compliment. It could be as simple as a smile. It could be as simple as volunteering to just write minutes for the secretary the next time you're having a minute. Lastly, please take notice. Be keen to know that, did I walk? Did I care about someone? Did I ask about someone and waited for a genuine answer and not just assume that they're okay? How is my body language? How is someone else's body language? Yeah, and dropping in check-ins all the time. And this is an action plan template that I would love to share with us. I found it somewhere. So in this one, like for connection, you can say, I purpose to go for picnic. And with who? I'll say, I'll go with Larry. When? Over the weekend. What are our budgets? I'll say maybe a sandwich, a leso, and maybe Larry can come with a drink. I've actually connected and I've taken care of myself. And what will be the purpose of the connection? To find out, to do a check-in on myself or on Larry. If it's learning, say you're gonna learn how to crochet. When? For the next 1 month. What are your resources? Take an example, you can say maybe yarns and maybe the crochet itself, yeah? And go on and do like that. So you can do this in all aspects of your life, yeah? So just keep reviewing, and it can be a daily thing, it can be a weekly thing, it can be a monthly thing. Please remember to have someone you're accountable to for this particular wellness template, yeah? So as I wind up, I just want to say that it is, if you have good mental well-being, you are able to recognize the good in yourself, such as your positive attributes and achievements. You are also able to express different range of emotions rationally. Like, it's okay to be mad, it's okay to be sad, but how do you express it? You also feel better to engage with the world around you, and you are also able to be productive, whether it's at work or social platforms. And finally, you're able to cope with stresses of daily life and manage times of change and uncertainty more soberly. Yeah. So these are some of the things that will enable you to know whether you're in good mental well-being. I want to say thank you and sorry for rushing all of us through these slides really, really fast. I am open for questions, and back to you, Larry.
Thank you so much, Dr. We truly, truly appreciate. And with that, I have given a compliment. You are awesome. You are one of the most beautiful people I know in body, heart, mind, and spirit. There are a couple of questions for you. I will just pick them as quickly as you can. I'll give you 3, and then once you pick them up, I'll do another 3. Dr. Ronnie, thanks, Dr. Bahati. What other things can we do to broaden mental health access in Kenya and in our communities? What other things can we do to broaden mental health access in Kenya and in our communities? Then there is another very good friend of mine, Pastor Oscar, who is asking, what are the initial signs to check if someone has started having mental issues? What are the initial signs to check? And number 3, who is affected generally most between men and women? Are there those who are more predisposed and so on? So I'll allow you to answer those questions, but as you do, I'll take this opportunity to promote these cards specifically for examination. Some of you now know that we make these cards at home. I make them with a friend of mine for many years, but we sort of started promoting them now. Happy birthday, I love you, thank you, are the best selling, especially now there is a bank that bought 600 cards from us and we are truly grateful. But what we are seeing most selling now are exam wishes for your candidates in CAPSEA. And these cards are sold at all textbook center branches. They have related images inside related to the exam, related to birthday, related to love and life. And we invite you all to look at Textbook Center or contact me and bless someone with these cards that they'll keep for life. They sell for 650. Daktari.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. Those are beautiful cards. So for the first question, where we're talking about how to broaden mental health access in Kenya and in our communities. Yeah, so in Kenya, one of our biggest challenges is the infrastructure, you know, because most of the times mental health is more like a tertiary service. Yeah, but over time, we are trying to make it more of a primary service and go back and deal with it like from like primary healthcare point of view, in the sense that we are now keen on increasing awareness and doing a lot of sensitizations, whether it's from the religious point of view, like in churches, in institutions like schools. There's so many programs that we are now working on, even as the ministry is trying to come up with policies that would support like schools, like discipline forces, more so from the point of the sensitization first. First, let's find out, let's know that there's a problem. And once we increase awareness, we are able to possibly direct people for service. So our resources are not as good as we would have wanted. Like psychiatrists are very few in the country. We are basically maybe around 150 or less. And almost half of the counties do not even have a single psychiatrist. So these are things that we're actually working on and making sure that we encourage even doctors and other healthcare workers to focus as well, to try and develop interest in mental health, to have the right personnel, like resource personnel, to support mental health access. However, we have a long way to go. Even just our budgetary allocation, mental health should be like 0.1% of the entire health budget allocation. So we have a long way to go. But for our communities, yes, we could take the primary healthcare approach where we just do community sensitizations and awareness and advocacy on matters mental health. The second question was about the initial signs to check for matters mental health. Well, there are a number of signs. Maybe I may not be able to finish outlining them right now. And it may depend on what the patient could be suffering from. Take a case example of maybe a mood disorder. The client may either be excessively happy, or what we usually call elated, or could be excessively sad, or could be irritable, you know, and maybe could be violent in that case. There are times where people would be compromised, their sleep would be compromised. Let's say they will sleep excessively or not sleep at all because of high energy levels. You know, there are people who would maybe have poor appetite. They do not want to eat. There are people who we call anhedonic, basically loss of interest in things. And most of that would be seen in patients with depressive disorders. There are also people who would possibly like have thought derangement. And this is psychosis specifically. You know, when you are a bit deranged thought-wise, you may tend to hear voices that others are not, or see things that others are not, or maybe get a little bit paranoid and feel like people want to harm you, or tend to have fixed beliefs that are not true. You know, say, I am the president of this country, or say, I think there's someone who wants to kill me, and things like those ones. So the signs, the symptoms can be quite a number. And those are just some of the ones I can possibly mention. So who is affected generally the most between men and women? Well, I can't say who is affected the most, but I can say that women tend to seek help the most and they will report it more than men. And so I think it's a high time that men should learn to also talk about what they are going through. Tunasema wanaume mfunguke, muongee, tujue shida iko wapi. Men naturally tend to hold back from saying what it is that they are going through.
Okay. Daktari, I know we have a few minutes, but I have other quite important questions. So I'll do a second and a final one before you close. One, there are two questions in one. You've answered a question by Benedict in which he just wanted to know from Benedict's iPhone, he just wanted to know statistics in the country. I've given it a little bit. A number of people are asking if they can get this presentation. I will respond to you. The entire meeting is recorded. I'll not send you her presentation, but her presentation has been here and it's been on the full screen. So the entire meeting is recorded. You will be able to find it on YouTube 10 minutes after this meeting, on my Facebook 2 minutes after this meeting, and on my social spaces, those who are on my WhatsApp, 15 minutes after this meeting. Daktari, there is a question. Do children suffer mental health issues? And how can we tell these? Can it be fixed in a child before adulthood? There are two people who ask questions, so I've just combined them. Do children suffer mental issues, especially those under 10? How can we tell these? And can it be fixed in a child? Number two, I'll only take those two for now. Does someone have to study medicine to study psychiatry? Does someone have to study medicine to study psychiatry? A number of the people are just very, very grateful for these. The final question for now, if someone is suffering, it just moved. If someone is suffering from mental health and do not subscribe to the interventions given because of machoism, what is the best approach to help them? Someone is suffering and wamekata the interventions because of machoism. What's the best way? As you come in, I want to share with this team that next month, the November month, which I think will be our 5th or 6th, third Thursday, we'll be studying planning for next year, planning for 2025. I'll be taking you through the process you can use to plan your year. I'm doing it in November so that you have at least 50 days, 45 days to plan for the following year. Daktari.
Yes, so I will address the first question where we're asking, do children suffer from mental illness? And if yes, how can it be fixed? So yes, children do suffer from mental illness, and it can range from as early as 3 years old when we start noticing. I think there are specific clusters of illnesses that affect children. If we've ever heard about autistic spectrum disorders, if you've ever heard about attention deficit hyper disorders, yes, some of these conditions can happen to children, and sometimes they grow into adulthood with these conditions. They can be managed. Whether they are able to be cured totally off it, I will not be very confident to say that. Sometimes also we have children who would suffer mood disorders way early, even less than 10, and they need to also be managed. As you all know, that mental disorders are chronic disorders, and most of the times there's no cure to them. So what normally happens is we only manage mental illness, and especially the chronic ones, Yes, things like maybe substance abuse, we can possibly get out of the addiction, but then matters mood disorders, there is a very high likelihood that you may need management for quite a long time before we say you're totally out of it. Sometimes lifetime, really. You may need to be on medication for a lifetime. So for children, yes, they do suffer. They could be mood disorder, could be early onset childhood schizophrenia. It could also be autism. It could be ADHD. There are children who even start using substances really early. There are children who get into addiction. There are children who have matters like truancy, or we can't possibly say personality disorder, but these are delinquencies, and they can actually progress into having personality disorders during adulthood. Yeah. Does someone have to study medicine to become a psychiatrist? Yes. You have to do your bachelor's degree in medicine and surgery for you to become a psychiatrist. Yeah. It is mandatory that you have to first do the MBCHB before you are able to be allowed to do your Master of Medicine in Psychiatry. Yeah. So what happens if someone refuses help yet they are sick due to machoism? What happens? So the sad bit is these people tend to end up with so many relapses that even by the time you're starting medication, the prognosis is not as good. And even as they continue, the quality of their life keeps deteriorating because of the frequent up and downs and mishaps that they get because of not being in the right state of mind. So sometimes there's nothing we can do. There are moments when people end up using force, whether physical force to take them to hospital, whether chemical stabilization just to get them to, hospital and comply to treatment. But remember, adherence and compliance is something that needs to come from the patient, and that becomes a bit hard. So these clients, if they keep refusing to use medication, there's a very high likelihood that they may not be able to function well, and they may cause harm either to themselves or even to the people around them, depending on the kind of condition that they have. Depression, they may be on their own, they may think of suicide and things like those ones, while mania and schizophrenia will be all over and very destructive. So it's always good if we can accept to be helped when it's time to be helped. Back to you, Larry.
Thank you. Just the final questions. You really don't have to respond to these. Maybe as you wind up, you need to respond to this one. How best can we manage stigma related to mental health? And then the final question, one is asking for link. I'll send the links. The final question, not really a question. Someone is saying, just thank you, Dr. Standa. Just a point to note for everyone. We need to be clear about the following terms, and we need to note that they can't be used interchangeably. I don't know if you agree. That is mental health, mental illness, and mental well-being. That these three mean different things. So, Doctor, just wind up in a minute.
Yes.
Roderick.
Yes,
Roderick. You are muted, Doctor. Sorry. She's muted, Dr. Sarah. Sarah Standa.
Sorry about that. I'm saying I totally agree with the last person who said we need to take note of that. I totally agree. There's a difference between mental health, mental well-being, and mental wellness. I totally agree with that. Yeah, and so maybe because of the interest of time, I'll not be able to get into the nitty-gritty of trying to explain those ones. Maybe we can go back and read more on that. But yes, there's a big difference. When it comes to stigma, I think we need to sensitize ourselves against stigma. That is the start of point of attending to stigma. And it has to start with ourselves. It is an individual thing that if someone starts stigmatizing against the other person, it is someone's responsibility to say, no, this is it. So the ice has to be broken by each and every one of us and start seeing people who are struggling with mental disorders as one of us who need embrace, who need care, who need to be factored in most of the things. Yes, whether it's health, whether it's work, yes. So it will have to start with us, and we'll have to do that conversation ourselves because it's affecting close people to us. In the interest of time, Larry, I think we're running short of time.
Dr. What I'll do is there are two other questions that are really key. I'll post them on Facebook and YouTube, and you'll send me the responses. I'll also post the responses. One was, what is the relationship between sleep and mental health? And secondly, how do you deal with toxic parents? Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an honor to have this wonderful sister of mine who I've known since childhood. For those who said, she's the daughter to the great poet, Professor Everett Standa, who we laid to rest about this time last year, and my Aunt Betty Smith. We call her Elizabeth Betty Smith. There are a number of you who have previously asked how they can support this particular thing. I don't give any token to anyone who comes here. If you wish to, you are more than welcome, but you can also support, because I pay for Zoom and I pay for other things related to this. The person who assists me, the lighting here, and when you make a pledge, please keep it. There's someone who promised to pay for Zoom, 2 people, they've never paid. I think, I can't remember how much it comes for me to host this on Zoom that allows up to 1,000 people, about maybe 60, maybe 18,000, I can't remember. So it's been an honor to have you, Dr. Sarah. Next month, as I mentioned, we will talk about planning for the following year, and I'll be taking us through that. And then we have these cards, best wishes, exam wishes, and other related cards at Textbook Center. It's 8:30 p.m. Kenyan time. The Lord bless you and keep you, and see you next month on the 3rd Thursday. I just want to confirm the date. I'd forgotten to check on that. 3rd Thursday will be 21st of November, 8:30 p.m. in Nairobi. The Lord bless you all and keep you. The link will be shared on Facebook and YouTube. Goodbye.